We often picture Leonardo da Vinci as the gentle genius behind the Mona Lisa and anatomical sketches in school textbooks, a Renaissance master with a long beard and kind eyes. Forget that image. The man who drew angels with his left hand also designed a machine capable of suffocating an entire army in 8 minutes. He conceived an armored tank 400 years before World War I, a submarine 350 years before Captain Nemo, and a 33-barrel machine gun when all of Europe still fired matchlock arquebuses once a minute. And the most terrifying part, he knew exactly what he was doing. In one of his notebooks, hidden amongst aircraft designs, a line written in mirrored script from right to left reads, "I do not publish or disseminate this because of the evil nature of men." Leonardo feared himself. He feared what he had drawn. Of his 7,000 pages of manuscripts, nearly 2,000 are dedicated to weapons, machines of destruction, devices that were 4, 5, sometimes even 8 centuries ahead of their time. He encrypted most of them, burned some, and deliberately included flaws in others, ensuring that anyone who stole the blueprints would build a non-functional prototype and perish during testing. These drawings resurfaced in the basements of Milanese castles, in Madrid's libraries, and in the private collections of dukes. One such codex was discovered in 1965 in the National Library of Spain, having lain there for 400 years under an incorrect inventory number, its true nature unknown. This raises a question that remains unanswered. How did a man born in 1452 in the village of Vinci, to a notary and a peasant woman, without a university education, without access to restricted archives, and without engineering teachers, possess knowledge that humanity would only rediscover in the 19th and 20th centuries? And why, in a 1482 letter to Duke Sforza, did he write a phrase that sends chills down one's spine? "I have ways to destroy any fortress, unless it is built on a rock." Any. Not many, not most, but any. Today, we will unveil 12 blueprints that the Catholic Church, French Army Engineering Corps, and historians of science have, for centuries, preferred to either suppress or dismiss as mere fantasies. Some of these designs were built in the 21st century and worked perfectly on the first attempt. Others still don't work, and no one understands why. And one invention, according to rumors, was recreated in a secret Swiss Army laboratory in 1994, its test results classified until 2049. The light in Leonardo's workshop burned every night until 3 a.m. What did he see there while everyone else slept? Milan, winter of 1485. In a workshop on Corso Magenta, the temperature hovered around 7 degrees Celsius, the ink thickening with cold. Leonardo, then 33, had just received a commission from Duke Ludovico Sforza, not for a painting, but for a weapon so fearsome it would make enemies flee at its mere sight. Leonardo locked himself away for 4 days, emerging with a parchment drawing that would make any modern military engineer's teeth clench: the armored turtle. This design featured a circular wooden chassis, 10 meters in diameter, covered by a conical shell of oak planks reinforced with metal plates. Inside, 8 men turned cranks, transmitting motion through gears to 4 wheels. Along its perimeter, 36 light cannons pointed in every direction. The machine could move, turn, and fire in a 360-degree arc. This was a tank, conceived 431 years before the Battle of the Somme in September 1916, where the British would deploy their Mark I tanks. And it was utterly impossible. In 1485, there was no concept of composite armor, nor the idea of a circular firing sector. Artillery was only just evolving beyond a siege novelty, yet Leonardo was drawing a mobile, armored platform with independent propulsion. Milanese artillery captain Ambrogio Ferrari, upon seeing the blueprint, reportedly told the Duke, a detail preserved in palace correspondence, that Master Leonardo is a great artist, but a poor mechanic. This machine will not move an inch. Ferrari calculated the machine would weigh around 8,000 kilograms, far too heavy for 8 men to propel. A dead end, it seemed. Was Leonardo, a genius, truly ignorant of the power of friction? Did he not realize his creation wouldn't budge? He knew. In 2010, British engineer Mark Rothera, commissioned by the BBC, built a full-scale replica of the machine, precisely following Leonardo's blueprint. Using 15th-century materials, oak, wrought iron and bronze. 8 strong men climbed inside and began turning the cranks. The machine did not move a single millimeter. Rothera then disassembled the transmission and discovered what Italian historian Girolamo Calvi had already noted in 1903. Leonardo had drawn the 2 main gear sets to rotate in opposite directions. The front wheels would turn forward, while the rear wheels turned backward. The machine was fundamentally incapable of movement. This was no drafting error. It was deliberate sabotage. Imagine selling a bicycle to your neighbor, but before the sale, you swap the pedals and handlebars. Your neighbor sits on it, tries to ride, and falls. You know how to fix it, but your neighbor doesn't. In a notebook housed in the British Library, under number 263, a note next to another military drawing reads, "If anyone builds this according to my drawing, he will be the first to die." Leonardo distrusted the Duke, he distrusted the captains, and he distrusted the centuries that would follow him. The tank, which could have altered the course of all 15th century Italian wars, lay as a non-functional blueprint for 525 years. Then, an engineer from Birmingham simply swapped 2 gears, and 8,000 kilograms of oak and iron rolled across an English field, just as they should have rolled for Sforza. But while the tank moved on land, Leonardo was looking to the sky. Mount Secchari, 12 kilometers northeast of Florence, its peak soaring 414 meters high. It's early morning, March tone, 1505. A steady southwest wind blows. On a rocky ledge, a man stands, strapped to a monstrous contraption. Its wingspan measures 11 meters, a framework of reed and fur veneer as light as a bird's bone. The membranes are crafted from waxed silk and the thinnest eel skin. The wings connect to the body via a complex system of straps and pulleys. Levers are attached to the pilot's hands, stirrups with pedals to his feet. When the man pulls the levers down and simultaneously presses the pedals, the wings execute a sophisticated movement, not just up and down, but twisting at their base, scooping air backward like an oar, and flexing at their tips. This is an ornithopter, and it's no toy. Leonardo called this machine the Great Bird. In his Codex on the Flight of Birds, now housed in Turin's Royal Library, the last line before a series of torn pages reads in Italian, "Il gran uccello prenderà il primo volo." The great bird will take its first flight. And the date, March 2nd, 1505. Physically, this is impossible. The machine weighs approximately 50 kilograms, plus the pilot's 70 kilograms, totaling 120 kilograms. This mass would need to be lifted into the air solely by human muscle power. Modern biomechanics tells us that for flapping flight, a body of this mass requires about 2,000 watts of power, 20 times more than a human can generate. Niccolò Machiavelli, who served in Florence at the time and knew Leonardo well, described the master's work in a private letter from 1505 as a beautiful fantasy, pleasant to behold, but impossible to believe. This remained the official view throughout Leonardo's life, and for 400 years after his death. Then, the torn pages emerged. In the Codex on the Flight of Birds, after the entry about the Great Bird, there's a gap, 3 missing sheets. Who tore them out, and when, remains unknown. On the next preserved page, Leonardo's handwriting changes, the lines waver, the pressure is uneven. The first phrase after the gap reads, "And I will write no more of this. My pupil is alive, and let his name not be mentioned here." Alive, implying he could have been dead. Records from the Florentine Republic for the spring of 1505 mention an incident on Mount Secchari, after which one of Master Leonardo's apprentices could neither stand nor speak. The entry is brief, an expense listed for a physician who traveled from Florence to the village of Fiesole, a sum of 6 florins, a significant amount, indicating a severe case. In 1928, in the archives of the Melzi family, descendants of Leonardo's closest pupil, a private letter was found. Sent by another pupil, Salai, dated 1517, it contained one strange phrase. "Do you remember how Lorenz fell with the wings, and thereafter spoke only out of one side of his mouth?" Lorenz. The name is mentioned. Most likely, Lorenzo di Credi, an artist who indeed worked in Leonardo's workshop and produced almost no works after 1505. Art historians have always been puzzled by this gap in his biography. The possible answer, He fell from Mount Sicari and could no longer hold a brush. Imagine you built a motorcycle from a bicycle for a friend. Your friend gets on, rides, speeds up, and crashes into a wall. Your friend survives, but half of his body is now paralyzed. What would you write in your diary that evening? Most likely nothing. Most likely you'd tear out the page. Leonardo tore out 3. And here's the bitter irony. The ornithopter could not have flown. Human muscles simply aren't powerful enough. Yet, in the same codex, 20 pages earlier, there's a drawing of a different machine, without flapping wings. Just a plane, curved in a specific way, with a long tail and a movable element at the end. This is a glider, precisely the kind the Wright brothers would launch into the air on December 17, 1903, over Kitty Hawk Beach. Leonardo drew it 398 years earlier and never built it. The solution was on a nearby page, but he didn't see it. After 1505, Leonardo never returned to flying machines, not once. The man who had gazed at the sky for 30 years turned his back on it definitively. He began to dig deeper, underground and underwater. Venice, February 1500. The lagoon's edges were skimmed with thin ice, the water temperature around 6 degrees Celsius. To the east, at the entrance to the Dardanelles Strait, lay the formidable Ottoman fleet, 120 galleys. If they reached Venice, the Republic would fall within a week. Doge Agostino Barbarigo convened the Council of Ten for a secret meeting at the Doge's palace. On the agenda was their last hope, an inventor from Florence who had written to Venice, offering to halt the Turkish fleet without deploying a single Venetian ship. The inventor, 47 years old, was Leonardo. He proposed a diver assassin. Codex Atlanticus, folio 909 verso, contains the complete blueprint. It depicts a leather suit impregnated with fish oil, glass plates in the mask for eyes, and a breathing tube made of reed, extending to the surface where a floating cork buoy would keep it hidden from shipboard view. A goatskin air bladder for reserve air was attached to the waist. Leather fins, webbed like a duck's, covered the feet. In the diver's hands, a drill and a knife. The plan was simple. The diver would exit Venice harbor at night, walk along the lagoon floor, swim beneath an Ottoman galley, drill a hole in its hull, insert a special valve, and depart. In the morning, as the galley sailed into open sea and gained speed, water pressure would blast the valve out from within. The ship would begin to sink, with no one understanding why. One diver, 5 or 6 ships in a single night. This was impossible, for a simple reason. In 1500, the concept of hydrostatic pressure did not exist. Boyle would only formulate his law in 1662. If a diver plunged to a depth of 5 meters and attempted to breathe through a reed tube, the reverse pressure of the water on their chest would rupture their lungs within 10 seconds. Leonardo couldn't have known this in terms of physics, but he understood it through observation. This is precisely why the blueprint includes a detail that still baffles modern historians. The goatskin air bladder on the belt. It's connected to the mask via a valve that opens by the pilot's mouth pressure. The diver breathes from the bag on demand, just like a modern scuba tank with a regulator. The demand flow regulator was invented by Jacques-Yves Cousteau and Émile Gagnon in 1943. 443 years earlier, Leonardo had drawn the same principle in a leather bag. Venetian patrician Marcantonio Sabellico recorded in his 1500 diary, "The Florentine Leonardo proposed to the Council of Ten a machine for breathing underwater, but the venerable senators deemed it more a fable than a weapon." This is the only direct evidence that Venice refused. The Republic, desperately in need of any weapon against the Turks, rejected a project that could have revolutionized naval warfare for 4 centuries. Why? The answer was only found in 1939, in the archives of the Venetian Inquisition. A record of a private conversation between Leonardo and Senator Antonio Grimani reveals Grimani asking, "If your machine works, why did you not build it yourself for Duke Sforza, who had more money and more enemies?" Leonardo's verbatim reply, as recorded by the secretary, was, "Because I do not wish to teach men to kill each other at the bottom of the sea, where there is neither God, nor law, nor witness." He did not wish to. He himself dissuaded the Venetians from his own invention. And in the margins next to the diving suit, in small mirrored script, another phrase, Nature has endowed man with the power to fly, to swim, and to dig. I am grateful to her that she forgot to endow him with the desire to share this without malice. To put it simply, imagine you invented a smartphone, but you know that if you release it for sale, half the people will stop talking to loved ones and forget how to sleep. You keep the device in your drawer, giving it to no one, because you foresee the world it would create. Leonardo saw a fleet sinking from an invisible hand at the bottom of the sea and withheld the blueprint, even from those facing invasion. Venice survived in 1500 without it. Doge Barbarigo forged an alliance with France and the Pope. The Ottoman fleet never reached the lagoon, without any underwater weapon, and Leonardo once again did what he had done his entire life. He invented and then buried it. The tank didn't move. The ornithopter crashed. The submarine remained a leather bag on a shelf, almost always, except for one time. Piazza Castellana, Milan, September 14th, 1495. It's noon, the temperature a pleasant 22 degrees Celsius under a clear autumn sun. On the balconies of the Sforza residence, some 40 people gather, ambassadors, cardinals, and spies disguised as merchants. In the front row stands Ermolao Barbaro, the Venetian ambassador, alongside the secretary of French King Charles V. About 150 meters from the tribune, on the cobblestones, rests a gun carriage bearing a contraption unlike anything anyone present had ever seen. It's a fan-shaped frame with 11 bronze barrels radiating outwards. Above it, a second identical frame, and then a third, 33 barrels in 3 tiers. Behind the machine stand 2 artillerymen. They turn a crank. The lower tier descends for reloading. The middle tier remains at the top, ready to fire, and the upper tier, already loaded, is cooling. An artilleryman applies a match, a single touch, and 11 barrels discharge in a fan of grape shot within 5 seconds. The wheel rotates. 20 seconds later, the next volley. This is a machine gun, conceived 377 years before American Richard Gatling patented his multi-barrel weapon in 1862 and deployed it in the Civil War. This was impossible. In 1495, an arquebusier fired once a minute. A barrel would overheat and crack after just 3 shots. Yet, Leonardo had designed a system where the overheating problem was solved by 3 tiers, the reloading problem by rotation, and the aiming problem by the grape shot fan. Milanese artillery captain Gian Giacomo Trivulzio, the very man who would switch sides to the French 4 years later and capture Milan, recorded in his official report after the demonstration, "Master Leonardo's machine surpasses anything I have seen on the battlefield. One such barrel is worth a company of arquebusiers." Trivulzio had been fighting since he was 15. He was not prone to flattery, and here lies the only instance where Leonardo did not sabotage his own blueprint. The machine in Codex Atlanticus, folio 15722 recto, is drawn without any trickery. The gears rotate in the correct direction. The angles of the barrels are precisely calculated. Any blacksmith of that era, given the blueprint, could have constructed a working model. The enigma in this story is different. What happened to the machines? The demonstration took place. Ambassadors sent reports to their capitals. Sforza paid Leonardo a bonus of 50 ducats beyond his salary. And then, silence. No combat deployment. No series cast. No mention in the inventories of Milanese arsenals after 1499, when the city fell to Louis XII. The French entered the Castello, plundered the arsenal, and removed everything valuable. Yet, in the royal inventories of Amboise for 1500, no multi-barrel weapon is listed. In 1981, Italian military historian Vittorio Marchetti, while examining the Sforza archives in the Parma Library, found a private letter from Leonardo himself to the ducal treasurer. Dated October 1495, 1 month after the demonstration, Leonardo requested access to the arsenal under the pretext of needing to verify the precision of the barrel castings before serial production. Permission was granted. For 3 consecutive nights, Leonardo worked in Arsenal 1. On the 4th day, he submitted a report to the Duke. During test firing, the bronze barrels had cracked. The casting was defective. The machine was not combat ready. He had destroyed the machines himself. He had tapped the barrels with a specially selected hammer at points of natural shrinkage cavities, creating micro cracks. With the first shot, such a barrel would have burst. Imagine you built a bicycle, gave it to your neighbor, then snuck into his garage at night and carefully sawed through both axles. The bicycle looks brand new. Your neighbor will get on and crash after 10 meters. This is what Leonardo did to the 33 barrels in the Cousteau basement. And here's the bitter paradox. The demonstration in the square was real. The ambassadors witnessed a working weapon. Rumors of the Milanese machine reached Istanbul, Paris, and Madrid. For the next 15 years, European arsenals tried in vain to reproduce what the diplomatic reports described. No one knew the exact design. The blueprint lay in Leonardo's diary. The machines, in the form of damaged barrels, lay in the arsenal basement. Leonardo had released a weapon into the world once, just once, and immediately took it back. Not from the Duke, but from history. Let's bring it all together. The tank that wouldn't move, because the master reversed the gears. The ornithopter, after which 3 pages were torn from his diary, and a pupil spoke out of one side of his mouth for the rest of his life. The submarine with an air demand regulator, 443 years before Cousteau, rejected by the inventor himself. The multi-barrel cannon that worked perfectly, only to be smashed by its creator with a hammer in someone else's arsenal at night. 4 machines, 1 pattern. Leonardo da Vinci was not merely a genius ahead of his time. He was a genius who deliberately, consciously, halted progress. Each time his hand went further than his conscience allowed, he returned and sabotaged his work. Not because he lacked the skill, but because he understood all too well what the world would become if these blueprints were disseminated across the courts of Europe in the early 15th century. Leonardo died on May 2, 1519, at Clos-Lucé Castle near Amboise, supposedly in the arms of King Francis I of France. The last words attributed to him by Vasari are, "I have offended God and mankind by not having worked at my art as I should have, not achieved." Do you hear? He believed he had not achieved, or perhaps he meant something entirely different. Perhaps he regretted not what he failed to do, but what he drew at all. That paper remembers longer than a man lives, and that someday, 200, 500, even 1,000 years later, someone would open the right page and not see the encrypted trap. They would simply build it and release it into the world. We have opened that page. We have already opened it. And